My name is LauraTKelso, and I'm an associate broker with Next Home Real Estate and also the creator of this series, because back a few years ago I had a crazy idea that all of you should really get a great education on all these different things that we start to experience in our 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. And I'm just so grateful to have you here. And I hope that all of you who, especially those of you who have been coming month after month throughout this year, I can't believe we only have one more presentation in this season before I break for the summer and come back next fall. But I hope that many of you are really starting to feel just more confident in the areas that we've talked about already. And even on those areas that you might still have more questions, I hope that you have built up a group of resources so that when you have questions, you know who to call. And that is half the battle, is simply knowing who to call when you do have a question. So one of the special things about doing this series here at Meyer Gardens is that to put on a presentation of quality and so forth, and be able to bring in this great location and bring you coffee that was late today. Sorry about that. But that really requires me to have people that support me, who also support the mission of helping people get educated, and I couldn't do that without my educational partners. And so I just wanted to take a moment and introduce some of those today that have been in the room month after month, with the idea that this is never going to be a sales pitch, but I do a very detailed job of determining who I'm going to work with within this industry, and I pick people who I believe have the right mission in mind, who serve clients at the highest level the way that I want to serve clients. And so if you or others that you know have these needs, I just encourage you to, reach out to them first before you might just open the phone book or, Google a search, because these guys know what they're doing. So I'm going to just have them quickly introduce themselves, and then I'll get started.
Good morning. My name is Sherry Hooper, and I'm with Summit Wealth Partners, and it's wonderful to have all of you here today.
Hi there, I'm Tom Carabalise. I'm the owner of Assisted Living Locators of Greater Grand Rapids and the Lakeshore, and really grateful to be part of this wonderful program.
Good morning. I'm Teresa Schisler-Boyshow with Boyshow Insurance Agency. I help people navigate the Medicare system, and again, I've loved being here all year. It's a great group, and Laura's wonderful.
Good morning. My name is Jared Adams. I'm with Caption Call. We provide phones that do captioning. It's great to have you guys all here. This is a fabulous program. Happy to be part of it.
Thanks, guys. I could not do this without you. Can you give them a round of applause, please? Okay, so you all have handouts that you can take notes on. I know you're going to come up with a lot of great questions today, so we're going to save those to the end. I feel like that's been the most efficient way to do that. And of course, then you'll have the information of these wonderful gentlemen if you want to reach out with more specific questions after the fact. That can definitely be the way to get your questions answered most. In addition to that, the feedback sheet, you can sign up for our very last presentation on the other side. Couple things, we will be breaking for the summer, but then coming back next year in September, and we're actually going to be moving to the bigger room. So we're going to be moving to the grand, I don't know what they call it, the grand room, the bigger room. So that we can accommodate more people and accommodate you comfortably, and that will be the goal as we continue to hopefully grow this. So we'll see on that. All right, so I'm going to let these guys quickly introduce themselves, and then I'll do my short introduction.
My wife Harvey set this up. My name is Peter Albertini. I'm an associate broker for Peter, and I'm the owner of Peter Albertini Properties with Keller Williams, Grand Rapids North.
Hello, my name is Rick Bennett. I am the operator and owner of GMC LaserMark business. Excuse me. There we go. And I'm also a recent condo owner, which is why I'm here to talk about that.
My name is Jake Blakeney. I'm the broker and owner of Edgerow Property Management here in Grand Rapids. We're a residential property management company.
Okay, so many of you who have been coming throughout the year know that majority of these talks really have little or nothing to do with real estate. And that's on purpose, most definitely. I think that real estate is only one small aspect of the many, many decisions that you guys are all faced with as you grow older and your needs change. But this is certainly a topic that I've desired to do for a while, because I have a firm belief that as we go through life and as we go through different family cycles of getting married and then having a family and raising our children, and then as we grow older, there's simply different types of real estate that can serve us better at different types of life, different times in our life. And so I think that the more that we can learn about these things, I will never tell somebody ever that, you should do this, you should buy a house, you should downsize to a condo. I think all those decisions are very, very personal ones. And to me, the important thing is to truly understand the questions that you need to ask to be able to best make those decisions for yourselves. Because even if you're working with a fabulous realtor, we're not mind readers. And so, thanks, Peter. We try our best to, I think in all these businesses, as we serve our clients, we do our best to really determine, what this client is saying to us and what those needs are. But we can't always tell that if the client does not know the right questions to ask. And so today is going to be a lot about taking away maybe some preconceived notions of what a condo is and what it isn't, opening up your mind to all the different options. So they come in every shape, size, price range. Just last night before I did this, I pulled all the condo listings in the greater Grand Rapids area, and just for fun, got them right here. So the highest one is $3,200,000 on Bridge Street, and the lowest one I pulled was $70,000, and pretty much every range in between. And so they really do come in just an absolute variety. And I have sold, both helped seniors buy and sell many condos in the last few years. I think they can be an excellent option at this stage of life. They can offer a tremendous amount of freedom for those who want to, travel and spend time with grandkids and just spend time doing other activities. And for those of you, when Saturday comes around and you don't want to spend all day working out in the yard, it can be a really, really nice option. But back to that idea that the key is absolutely knowing and understanding what you are purchasing before you go ahead and make that decision, so that there are no regrets later. Because, we want to make sure that all of you guys are making decisions that you're going to be happy with for years to come and not regret. All right, so Peter, we're going to start with you. And Peter and I work together at Keller Williams, and I am so excited to have him on the panel, because even though I've sold a fair amount of real estate in the last few years, I'm this little neophyte compared to Peter, because he's a rock star, basically. And he's got, you can bow, it's okay. He's got over $100 million in career real estate sales. That's a lot of stuff. And so he's sold a lot of properties, including a lot of condos. And so I just want to start with the basic idea of when you're starting to work with a client, and many of the clients that I work with that are in their 60s and 70s and even 50s, we all start with that idea of we're downsizing from a large family home that we probably raised our families in, and determining what is the next step. Are we moving to a smaller home, or does it make sense to possibly move to a condo? So when you start that conversation, tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
Well, you pretty much explained all of it when you introduced yourself, so this may sound redundant. The first thing, after years of practice and professional experience and 40 years of marriage, I have found that the first thing I do is listen and find out what people think they're doing, what they think a condo is, and try not to anticipate informing them of something they already know. The basic premise of a condo, and this is important, is that it's your ownership. There's no difference. There's no difference between owning a condo and a home. The equity in that is yours entirely to do with as you wish. Buy or sell as you wish. When I ask people what they perceive is going to be the lifestyle, a couple of years ago, a national magazine did an interview, a bio on me. And after 3 hours of just laborious questions, I read the article and what she had gleaned from our conversation. She says, Peter realizes that buying and moving is an emotional experience. We make the numbers fit. So when you're thinking about downsizing, it's hard to understand condo living if you've never had one. And the irony is, it's a much simpler lifestyle. If you're looking to simplify your lifestyle, then a condo is a good choice. But you could do that in a small home. My wife and I bought a small home in Heritage Hill, and then our 2 adult children came back. But our choice was based on our lifestyle. My wife's a gardener, and we've always had German Shepherds. So a condo really didn't fit that. The thing about a condo is, the first thing is physicality. Primarily one-floor living. And if you live in a traditional household, not many traditional houses have bedrooms on the main floor, or even utilities, washers and dryers on the main floor. There are actually some condo developments in Grand Rapids that are no-step condos. Nowhere from your entry into the garage, to the house, to any room, to any utility, will you need to step up or down. Every morning I get up and step out of bed. When I wake up, I look up, I think I'm 25, and when I hit the ground, I know I'm not. So that is one of the aspects. Now, all condos, the floor plans are designed for you to not need other space. You can get other space. One of the traditional questions is, I want room for my children and their children to come so they can, and my internal thought is, wait till they're all here for 4 or 5 days. You won't be so happy you had that much room. When I came here in 1991, condos was a novel idea because the population was not used to them. They were used to larger living space. Less space does not mean less comfort or less utility. Actually, it means more utility, and in some cases, more comfort. There are condos in buildings. They look like apartments, but you own them. There are single freestanding condos, and a condo which you own the inside of a condo. Anything outside is tended to by the condo association, the bylaws. So anything you want to do inside is yours. Keep the shades down. So outside is maintained by the condo association's reserve fund. I built a development in Natick called Skyvale. Those were site condos. Those are, you own the lot, you own the house, you have complete control of the exterior and the interior of the house. What you share in common with the rest of the site owners is the maintenance of the grounds, the driveway, the lights, and all of that. Smaller homes are just smaller homes. If you lived in a house, you live in a smaller house. but it comes with the responsibility of you're insuring it, you're maintaining the outside, the insurance, everything that goes on, the work you need to maintain your house. If you're like us, we weren't ready for that yet. If you don't like, as Laura said, doing that kind of work, mowing your lawn, painting your house, whatever, then a condo's a good alternative. The association is responsible for everything outside, the siding, the roof, the driveway, and they come with variations of amenities that come in to the homeowners association dues, which contributes to the reserve fund. Now, we're going to get to qualifying for a mortgage, so I'll stop there.
So you pretty much answered questions 1 through 3. So thank you, we're good. And really, so that, so that's a big part of describing. They come in all shapes and sizes. And the main difference is that, you still own it just like a home, but you're not taking care of all of it. You're only taking care of a portion of it. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because it's definitely different when you're purchasing a condo in terms of potentially using a mortgage. So while many of the clients that I work with are at a stage of life where they can purchase a condo with cash, that is not always the case. And we do often see clients that use a mortgage, but it's different. So Peter, if you can talk a little bit about the difference in how someone might finance, or the other things that they would want to think about when they finance a condo as opposed to a house.
One of the things, the primary thing is, can you get a mortgage? Not all condominium projects are warrantable. That means that they don't meet the criteria set by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So, and that usually comes under inability to meet certain standards that the government requires for condos to be mortgageable. Occupancy, reserve fund, do you have enough cash? Is there more than 15% of the people in the condominium behind on their dues? That would eliminate them from being warrantable. Now, warrantable means you're able to get a conventional mortgage, and all the increments that are required in a regular mortgage. The two differences: not only do you have to qualify, but the project has to qualify, and that's where the warrantable, non-warrantable come in. Now, if something's not warrantable, that doesn't mean you can't get a mortgage. We have a lender here, and in this environment, in this financial environment, there are lots of opportunities to get a non-traditional mortgage on a non-warrantable home. Usually they come out of portfolio loans by banks, which is their money that they take out of their self instead of getting government assistance in backing in their loans. The only difference is you will pay a higher rate mostly. And that is something you encounter when you buy your first car, when you buy your first home. Your rates are usually higher. Does that mean, well, and that also comes with the cautionary tale that if the government won't support them, you need to keep that in mind. And that will come in question number 4. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I get reprimanded by Laura again.
Yeah, I guess I would kind of follow up on that and say that it's not necessarily, it could still be a very good quality condo association, but the qualifications for it being warrantable, you can also call that financeable or mortgageable. are simply different. So you might end up finding a condo association in the location that is perfect, that you totally love, that you simply, it does make sense to find alternative financing on, and there are certainly lenders that are have the ability to lend on them. It's simply different than when you're shopping for a home, where most every home will qualify for a standard conventional mortgage, as long as you qualify as a client. So it does get a little, you know what, and I don't mean to interrupt, but we're going to try and save all the questions for the end. Warrantable in the easiest sense means that you can obtain a standard mortgage on the property.
A conventional loan.
Yes.
Same kind of loan you would get on a house or anything. It means that the government is willing to finance the lender.
No. It's just not a term that would ever come into play when you are buying a house. It's something that's pretty specific to condos. Is that correct, Peter?
Yes, and you will encounter whether the reality of whether it's warrantable by your lender or your real estate agent. The minute you apply for a mortgage and you tell them what you're buying, they will do the background check to see if they're going to get financing to finance you. So, like most things, and Laura laid this out very well in the beginning, nobody knows everything. I am not going to make a life joke now. Nobody knows everything. And it's important that you have people helping you that are trustworthy and knowledgeable. A good realtor, a good lender, in some cases a good attorney. And if you utilize all of that, you minimize and probably eliminate any potential for making a bad legal decision or even a bad financial decision from that perspective, your own financial perspective, irregardless.
One of the big things that I find with real estate transactions is that every single stage builds on the next stage. So it's kind of that question of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. We can't really determine if a place is warrantable. It doesn't make sense for us to dig into those details if we don't even know if a client likes that location. So we always start with a very wide net, determining, let's start looking at condos. Let's see what you even like and what areas you like and what associations you like. And at that point, when you start to narrow that down, then we determine of those associations that you like, does that match with the way that you need to purchase this condo? Are you going to purchase with cash? Do you need to use financing? If so, what type of financing? And, that's where a lot of the work comes in, and that's where, like Peter said, not every realtor and every lender are just going to have the same level of knowledge in digging into those details. And a lender or a realtor that might do a great job working for a first-time buyer, helping them buy a little house, is not going to necessarily be the best choice for something that's more complicated, that truly requires these additional questions that could come back to bite you if for some reason they're not asked and they come out later.
Yeah, that was part of the first question. When I ask people what are they looking for, what are they thinking, some people want to live close to an urban area, some people don't. Some people need extensive landscaping, some don't. Some need condo community amenities, some people don't. And there are different fees for utilities. Some people will take care of their own garbage. If you live by yourself, you might want to pay for that yourself. Utilities, the same thing. So as people explain to you how they live and how they want to continue to live, you try and match that up. I always say I can find you a condo or a house. I just can't. I don't know where you want to live. Some people can drive down the block next to a gas station. Some people want to drive down into a tree-lined street to have that feeling, I'm coming home and I'm glad I'm here.
So Peter, have you ever helped someone move into a condo who then hated it?
I didn't like that question.
This has got nothing to do with your real estate talent, but I'm just curious because I think that sometimes we have clients that think they're moving, that have these preconceived notions, and then we might help them get what they've told us they want, and then they turn back and they don't like it for some reason. So
Yeah. Well, let me just set the premise that people buy houses they don't like. The National Builders Association does a study every 5 years, and they find that 94% of people who build houses wouldn't build the same house. That's because your needs change, and your ideas change about how you want to live. There's an expression, and don't take it personally, buyers are liars. And what it is that you're limited to your own experience. If you've never lived in a ranch, it's not a conception to you. And then you walk into a ranch and you say, you have your realtor looking at 62-story houses, and by accident they walk into a ranch and they turn around and they say, this is it. Well, the same thing about condos. What you think is based on your experience. You can't think anything else. You're completely subjective. So I've had one or two people, or more, who have moved in and found out they were rigid in their preconceptions. They were not open to experimenting. I used to teach a bias class, and I would ask them, what's your objective? And they would give me all kinds of answers. And I would say, your objective is to eliminate buyer's remorse. What you want to do is make sure they are as informed and are capable of understanding their own thinking and what you're saying. They often don't correlate. But most of the time, people get in and they feel constricted. They realize that they can't do as much gardening as they want. They realize there isn't as much community, or there's too much community. So you have to have that experience. I only dated one woman in my life, my wife, so I don't know about other women. But until you try other experiences, you don't know how you feel. You try other flavors, you don't know how you feel. My wife's laughing, thank God. So that's and it's not because they didn't like something particular. It's this general change. We're resistant to change by nature, and it's to change. I tell people, if you give it a little time, you'll find the things that are irritating you now will probably dissipate.
yeah, I guess I would add the same thing for those that move into a senior community of any kind. Anytime you're moving out of a home, even if you read through a lot of the senior community documents, they'll, talk about the idea of don't make any big decisions until you've been here for 90 or 120 days, because they want you to give yourself time to get acclimated to your new place, to make friends, to form community, to really determine, what it is you like and what you might not like.
That's a good point. Condominium complexes are not populated by baby boomers. There are a lot of young people in them. They find it more efficient to live that way, understandably. There are a lot of working couples that live there. Now, there is a thing called blue zones. I don't know if you know about them, but there are areas in the country and in the world where people as a group live longer. And they evaluated the criteria that gave them that longevity. And one of them was, a key one, was socialization. In a condominium complex, you're more than likely to find a different level of ages, professions, experience, ethnicities, and taste. So that variety is what they're talking about in blue zones that keep you socialized, that keep you alert. Condominiums are not old age homes. That's a terrible term, right?
We don't use that term anymore, Peter.
All right.
It's very unpolitically correct.
Well, I'm a baby boomer, and I forgot that. I tell people, don't expect me to remember your name. I don't remember where I parked. But that's important to know. If you don't want to step out your door and look like everybody looks the same, you won't, primarily. You won't. And it's a good thing. Neighbors help neighbors.
I love having neighbors personally. My husband, on the other hand, wants to move us out on 10 acres, so we'll see when that happens. We've got another year. So we're going to talk for just a second about association documents, because one of the things when you're buying into a condo, they have what's called bylaws and other association documents, and often they're easily over 100 pages or more of very detailed, often, legalese. And so, Peter, I just wanted to ask you, when you are working with a client to buy a condo, do you generally read through all of those exciting bylaws for them and try and specifically point out things that might be, that you would want to make sure that they know, or do you let the client themselves read through all those pages and determine what is most concerning?
The way you couch that question, it makes it hard for me to answer yes. You said all those pages. Well, I've created bylaws and documents. And at this point, I realize what's important. In the bylaws and regulations, I call them responsibilities. I don't like the term regulations. I don't like discipline. Many of them are blue plate. They're building plans, they're typical municipal requirements, the things that you might, and you get a time period when you write a purchase agreement. You'll have the opportunity to make it a contingency on your approval of the bylaws, 72, 100 hours, whatever it is you think you want. In conjunction with people, I ask everybody to read them. And it's good sleeping material sometimes, but I ask everybody to read them because what you hear is not always what you read. And sometimes you'll see something and you'll say, well, he didn't say that, and I did. Well, I'll swear I did. But the thing is, everything is always your responsibility. And that's the way I grew up. Don't blame somebody else for something unless they really set out to cheat or misdirect you. That's why, again, it's critical to have a good lender and a good realtor. Now, once you've gone through it, this is something, and the things you're looking for are the reserve fund, assessments that come due. Sometimes they approve it at the board and it doesn't show up in the documents. And all of a sudden you realize you've got a $5,000 assessment when you're moving in. If you know that prior to it, you can negotiate it with the current seller. I also, if they'll allow you, sometimes homeowners association meetings are open to potential buyers. Go to a meeting, talk to neighbors, knock on the door. You have cautionary tale. The door you knock on might be a cranky person, and you move on and find somebody who's going to give you a legitimate answer. But a good realtor should know what to look for in the bylaws. He should encourage you to read them. She should encourage you to read them, and you should have your lender take a look at them also.
Awesome. Yeah, very, very good practices. So now we're going to move on to Rick.
Oh, I have more stuff.
Oh, sorry. You'll have questions at the end, Peter. I promise. I promise you that. So I helped Rick and his lovely wife, Julie, move into a condo after many years in their home. So, Rick, if you can tell everyone a little bit about the house you and Julie lived in before you considered purchasing your condo, what were some of the things that you loved about it, and what were some of the parts that you were genuinely, not sad about giving up?
Well, first of all, thanks for letting me be here. This is really fun. Yeah, our original house was something that Julie and I, well, our very first house was a very small house on Plainfield. And after our first son came into the world, about 3.5 years later, we had a second one on the way, and we thought, well, we can either stay in this very small house or we're going to move. So we decided to move, and we were fortunate enough to buy a lot on a subdivision that had been pushed out on McIntosh Avenue, and we absolutely loved it. So we were able to build the home that we wanted to build by basically copying a parade home that we saw. We went through a number of parade homes. We saw one that in particular we just thought was fantastic. And we rebuilt it with a few minor modifications, and we absolutely loved it. There was never a day we went in, unlike a lot of people, and what Peter had mentioned previously, we're very fortunate to every day say, I love this house. And I could go back, mark my own words, and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to die here. I will never, ever leave this home. I love it so much. And part of that was the community, for sure. I mean, we moved in at a time where all other young couples, we were 31 years old at the time. In 6 months, I will be 60. So it's a different perspective. But the neighborhood and growing up with all those kids and being in the same elementary school and all of that thing, it was priceless. And I would have never changed that for anything. It was a beautiful, beautiful place to be. It was charming. It was magical. Now, that being said, to answer your other question, why would you leave the house that you swore you were going to die in? And honestly, in a 30-year span, you look at things differently. You're suddenly not young anymore. And this house had beautiful, beautiful staircase that we traveled a lot because all the bedrooms were upstairs. It was a 4-bedroom home. One of them was downstairs and whatnot. But, nonetheless, absolutely delightful. But at some point, it's a big house. And what we discovered after we became empty nesters, both our boys moved out and are now with their wonderful significant others. And we were kind of rattling around in this house. We probably used 1/3 of it. We spent most of our time in the kitchen. Probably a partial amount of it in half the dining room and half of the living room, and then we slept there and we showered there. And that was pretty much it. And so the economy started getting weird. Things in the world became weird. We, went through COVID. We went through odd things. And as you age, one of the things that is striking to you is that you're not absolutely in control of everything. You are not invincible. And anything that you think you can will into existence, you can't. So with all these outside forces, Julie and I, as emotional as we were about the home, we're also very pragmatic people. And the one advice I was given as a young man is you never let your heart make decisions for you. And that's great advice. Only ever use your head to make decisions and your wisdom, because that will, your heart is dumb. Your heart is a stupid thing. You'd never listen to it. It's great for writing poetry and things like that, but don't let it make your financial decisions for you. So we said, at one point, we could, and again, we were fortunate that we had paid off the house years prior. And I said, babe, if things go south, because I'm self-employed, and that could change any minute. I could be out on the street. Sometimes you own a business, sometimes a business owns you, and sometimes the markets change, and you could be done in no time. And that doesn't elude me. So I said, if things go south, we have this big, beautiful, pretty house, but we can't eat the drywall. If things get really bad. And, as you do mature, you see that things change, and not always for the better. So we thought it was high time that, we downsized. We contacted Laura, and she did an amazing job. Basically whooping us into shape to get this house, ready for sale. Now, we did, nobody ever sits around and says, oh, I loved moving. Moving was super fun. No, it's not. Moving stinks. But it was worse for us in that we wanted to hit a particular timeline before the summer ran out because our house looks beautiful in the summer. And so we were up till 2 in the morning packing stuff. And when you're in a home for 25 years, you know, and we consider ourselves minimalists, okay, my wife and I do. We just don't need a lot of stuff. We unpacked and unearthed things that you just simply can't imagine. So it was an odyssey for us to get from clearing out the house to getting into a condo that, by the way, we do love. But to really answer that question of what was it that, you know, you would struggle or not struggle to give up, I couldn't wait to get rid of land or yard chores or any outdoor thing that had to do with the house. Hated it. I hated it since I was a young man. My first job was being in a lawn mowing business. You know, I mowed lawns for people when I was a kid to make money. And I hated it then. I liked the money. And I hate it now. So I never wanted to do that ever again. And my wife and I have passions that we both pursue, and we now have gobs more time for that. And we are on a trek to simplify our lives. Because that's what we want, and it's a good path to take. So anyway.
So what were some of the things that actually Julie and the boys even struggled with when it came time to make that decision and actually sell the family home?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and it's going to be a tough one for everybody because if you have a heart and you have memories, it's going to be tough. Now, that being said, you know, we are pretty pragmatic about, you know, what a home is to us. And the biggest struggle was actually for my youngest son. He was actually pretty teary about the fact that he wouldn't be able to show his kids the room that he grew up in. And I said, you know, I get that. And it's not like Julie and I didn't stop periodically when we were taking things off the boys' walls in their rooms and going, oh no, you know, what do we do with this? And, you know, sure, that is definitely going to happen. But we don't have any regrets because what we come to find out is that Julie and I, we make the home. We are the ones that make the home that our boys are used to coming to. And when we got into the new condo and everybody came over, it just felt exactly like home. And there was still stuff on the walls that was from our previous home. You know, home is where you hang your hat. Home is where the heart is. Home is what you make of it. So he got over that in short order, and it was, I would never change that decision one bit. Julie, on the other hand, she didn't struggle. As a matter of fact, she said to me about a week in, she said, is it wrong that I don't really, really miss our old house? And I said, nope, not if you love this one. So that was a good thing.
I love to hear that. That's
Yeah.
so helpful. So what were some of the things that were most important to you as we started to narrow down our condo options? Because there's a wide sea of options out there, and there were definitely some specifics that we needed to find.
Yeah, that's true. We at first were kind of enamored with some slab homes and or townhouses that we saw. The only problem with those construction is that they basically sit on a fairly thin slab of cement, and then they are 2 stories of wood constructed things. Little bit about my life, peek into my world. I'm a drummer and I play in a band with my son, who kind of got me into all this stuff. And we have been playing music since he was very young. And, you know, drums are loud. Fortunately, I do play electronic, so I can play them with headphones so I don't bother my neighbors. But once in a while, we like to let it out of the box and really jam. Pounding on a kick pedal of a drum kit can reverberate all the way through an entire townhouse complex. No problem. So that had to be out. My wife, if I may brag for just a minute, she is currently the Midwest gold medal women's rowing champion. Yeah, I know, she's awesome. And she's also the president of Grand Rapids Rowing Club. So if any of you are interested in learning rowing, come on down and check her out. At any rate, she, during the off season, when she can't row on the actual water, has this thing they call an erg. It's a very noisy, clattering, loud rowing machine thing, and she's on it constantly. So, because she has to, that's how you maintain being gold medal champion. And so therefore, in our world, we needed something with a basement, something very hard, and something very, very walled off from our neighbors, because we didn't want to just move in and immediately be the most hated couple in the entire community. So Laura was amazing in that we looked at a lot of things, and I will admit, we're a very, very particular couple. We don't like a lot of things, but the things that we do like, they have to kind of be perfect. So we're a bunch of fussy budgets, and Laura was very accommodating to us. And we found Meadow Creek, which was new construction. They did, in fact, have basements. We don't, fortunately, we don't have knee issues yet at this point. So going up and downstairs is not a problem, and it gave us the quiet that we needed. Now, the other beautiful thing about most new condo construction is there is generally about a 4-inch thick wall of 2-inch gypsum separated by foam, an air gap that basically you can't hear anything. And at one point, I actually went down and turned up all my amps and everything and the TV as loud as it could go. Went next door, knocked on the door of Leslie and Dell, our lovely neighbors who we adore, and I said, "Can you hear anything?" And they're like, "What are we supposed to be hearing?" And I said, "Good, that's all I need to know." And it's fantastic. So in that regard, you're not going to really hear anything about your neighbors, especially in newer situations. So.
Awesome. So one of the things we were able to, kind of avoid some of the crazy competition, because majority of condos these days are on the market for 10 days or less. They're very, very competitive. And so by purchasing a new build, what were some of the things that you liked about that, in terms of there were a few things that you changed? And
Yeah, actually in our situation, we could only change a couple of things, because in Meadow Creek's deal, these are relatively inexpensive condos, but really a great value. We saw some similar that were easily $100,000 more, and we were like, for what? They had maybe kind of a thinsy fireplace, and that was about it. And I was like, $100,000, that's a lot for a fireplace. And I don't really need one of those. So new construction is great because it's new. There's something wonderful about that, in that you never have to worry about how old are these pipes, or what's going on with this toilet, or any other things of that nature. So that's a great thing. We did get to pick the flooring in a couple of spots. The paint was already what it was going to be, because that's how they kept the price down, is they made big buys on a lot of stuff in advance, and they'd already been sitting on it. And, we didn't like the chandelier thing, so we ditched that and got something else, and, it is what it is. But overall, the new construction was great, but as Laura had mentioned previously, the price was already set. And it was set, full disclosure, we sold our home for $339?
something like that.
I think that's what we finally settled on. We bought the condo for $252, and we banked the rest. And so, and another quick sideline is, we did that partially also because of our families and what they are going through. My parents are 87. Julie's mom just had a massive stroke, lost the entire left side use of her body. We have family members, brothers and sisters and whatnot. Black sheep haven't, sometimes made the best life choices in the world. We kind of financially wanted to circle our wagons to protect them as well. And so this was a great opportunity for us to bank that equity and do things with it to help our family, even though sometimes they're dumb. But that we
We'll
can't always
scratch
help.
that
Right,
from
we'll
the
scratch
record.
that, thanks. So yeah, the condo community that we moved into, and that situation was great. And now, just to give you an insight into this, the latest builds in there, the last ones that are going up, the same exact unit that we have, same square footage, same build, everything, is now $369 from $252. So condos can be an amazing investment as well. We had no idea that was going to be the case. I mean, it's just stunning. So.
Yep. So we're going to kind of wrap up Rick fairly quickly because we want to have time for
'Cause he talks
Jake.
too much.
Oh, no, not at all. So any regrets were there anything that is, unexpected that you've found since you've lived there that have been challenges, and just really anything else you'd love to add before we wrap up?
Not really. I mean, again, Julie and I knew what we were getting into, but to reiterate, something Peter had covered earlier, an HOA is a new thing for us. Bylaws are a new thing for us. Having a governing board of your property is a new thing for us. And I'm not going to lie, there was a little bit of drama there with some of the folks who had moved in. One lady in particular thought she actually owned her land that she's sitting on. No, you don't. She started planning all this crazy stuff and putting gnomes and plastic beavers and all this tchotchke stuff. It was just tchotchke wonderland. And of course, one of the heavies in the community, the one guy I dubbed mayor of Meadow Creek, he had to go in and confront this lady and tell her, you can't have all this stuff in here and you got to get rid of all this crap. It's just not allowed. And she just couldn't grasp that this wasn't her yard. It's like, nope, you own from the studs in, basically. Everything on the exterior and out is part of the association. So that's a unique thing. What's fun about our community too is we actually have a Facebook group, and we are together a lot on Facebook, and we are having our own block party. We're very tight, and the best part about this place is the people, and they're mostly retired. I'd say we're probably the fourth youngest group there. There's one family that actually does have teenagers, but for the most part, it is kind of a retirement community. And they're just lovely people to be with, and we enjoy them very much. But, some of them do get a little, like somebody wanted to have a garage sale the other day. It's like, nope, no garage sales, not allowed in the bylaws. And well, that was some Facebook drama right there. But, but you have to be okay with those things. And, and we are, and that's fine, because I don't want to have a garage sale. I don't want to mow my lawn. I don't do any of that stuff. So that was good.
Okay, just so you know, Gnome Lady needed a better realtor. That was the problem. So.
That's true.
All right, so Jake, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to you. So we're going to do a little basic, really condo management 101. So what is the main function of a condo association? How are they formed, and how are they managed over time?
Yeah, so the condo association, it's really the governing board. It's composed of all of the residents, the owners, who have ownership in a unit there at the property or the building or the community, depending on the setup. And so when you own a condo, you are actually a part of that governing board. Now, sometimes that association will have designated board members to not always, but usually there's a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, whatever the titles they choose. But once you buy a condo, once you purchase there, you're a part of that association, and so you become a member of the governing body. Oftentimes, that association or that board will elect to hire a property management company like mine to sort of run the operations of the place, whether it's a building, whether it's a community, or whatever the case may be. And ultimately, the association itself it's really the cornerstone of the planned community, the residential community. It really brings continuity. It helps to uphold standards so that you don't face blight or because everyone who lives, I think Peter said this, it's typically a condo community is very diverse. You're not going to see the same people. You're not going to look in the mirror when you look out the door, right? And there's so much beauty in that. But with that, there's all different walks of life. And the association, I think, really preserves the integrity of the community for the people who live there. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good way to put it. And we're going to go into kind of some of those restrictions that help truly add and hold the value later on. But what are some of the most important things that potential buyers should know about an individual association before buying in? And also, Peter alluded to this on one thing, but what are some of the very best ways for them to truly find out that information prior to buying?
Yeah. Peter did touch on a lot of this earlier, but so I'll be fairly short with it. There's these things. So bylaws is one of the terms for them. Also CC&R, so covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Not CCR, the rock band from Born on the Bayou, which I'm a big fan. I'll probably listen to it today. It's a beautiful day. But read those, and I'll echo Peter. I ask my clients to read those. If I'm helping a client purchase, I always ask them to read through them. I also look through them. I want to, I want to know what they're getting into as much as they do, just so that I can help guide. But ultimately, it is your responsibility to know what you're signing. So that's first and foremost. If at all possible, talk to the board president, or knock on, like he said, knock on a door. Drive through at different times of the day. Morning often looks different than nighttime, right? Mm-hmm. And so I encourage my clients to do that all the time. I'll drive with them. Look for, if you can get your hands on financials, make sure that there are strong financial reserves, because that's going to affect special assessments, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, I think. But another thing that a lot of people don't think of is to research local public records for any litigation or past litigation against the association. Now, we live in a pretty sue-happy society, so sometimes you have to kind of dig into, okay, what was going on here? Is this just crazy person, ready to sue anybody? And hopefully you have a real estate agent who can really help you through that. Even if you, and this isn't a solicitation, but if you need help, I'm running a property management company. I'm always looking at public records, whether it's for tenants that we're screening for our properties, or looking at these types of things. So I'm happy to. You've got my contact info. I'm happy to help you sort of decipher and interpret some of those, me or someone from my team. So feel free to reach out for that.
Yeah. And that word decipher, I mean, it really is. When you're going through, when I'm starting to help a client with a condo and I'm printing off bylaws, I'm sitting there with a highlighter, trying not to fall asleep, and really going through and, oh, yep, okay, dogs only under 20 pounds, only one pet, okay. Oh, you can't have a guest park in the driveway for more than 3 nights in a row. Okay, they talked about their kids coming to visit from out of state. I mean, you take what this client has talked to you about and you really try and pick out what are the items and the restrictions in the bylaws that they are going to care about. There's a lot in there that, they may not care about. So. Yeah. So what is a typical range of condo fees that we tend to see in this area, and what are some of the most common things that are covered? And also, what I find is there's a number of things that can go either way, and so we always want to be crystal clear on, is that actually covered? When you're out looking at 10 sets of condos, they start to all blend together with what's covered and what isn't.
Yeah. And I hate questions like, what's the typical fee? Because
that's why I ask it.
Yeah. Give it to the new guy. Oh, wait. I guess these guys haven't been up here before, right? Understand that there are so many variables in this. And so the numbers that I'm going to throw out are fairly typical. I'm going to give you a range, but don't hold me to it, okay? You got to promise me, don't hold me to it. Around here, I think we typically see low to mid hundreds per month is pretty standard. Zillow actually lists the nationwide median as 290. I don't know how recent that stat is, because the stats change all the time, but that's a good ballpark. I mean, there's exceptions though. Luxury condos that have just a huge list of amenities and location, all that type of stuff could be upwards of the thousands per month. And so that's why it's so important to know what you're getting into beforehand. Things that are covered, very often, if there's a pool, a clubhouse, the grounds, snow removal, these types of things are typically covered in condo communities. There's obviously differing things, but things that could go either way, oftentimes water, sewer. Sometimes there's one water line that feeds that whole property. Other times, each unit is individually metered, and oftentimes it's depending on the setup of the community. A site condo with individual homes, most likely they're going to have individual meters. Not always, but most likely. Sometimes I've seen cable TV included in those fees. So trash is one. A community with one building or a few buildings, several buildings, might have one dumpster area rather than individual trash bins that you roll out every week. So yeah, those are some of the main ones that I see go either way. But I think it really, again, I'll refer back to knowing those bylaws, knowing the covenants and the conditions and all of that.
Yeah, I kind of set him up with that question because I was going to say the real answer is there is no typical set of fees because they can absolutely be all over the board. But a lot of the condos that I see in like a standard ranch condo, easily between $250 and about $375 per month that we see regularly right in this area. But they do absolutely change. So one of the big reasons that many people do move to a condo is to get rid of that exterior maintenance. But I will say that I get this often on the exterior side. There's a lot of things that can go either way as well.
Yeah.
So talk about some of the things that you might think are covered that are really not covered.
Yeah. This time of year, too, for me, I have 3 daughters, 14, 12, and 10. And this time of year is when I'm like, man, I would love to not have to do any work on our house because my oldest plays soccer and volleyball at the same time. My middleest runs cross country, and my youngest plays soccer, and I coach her. So it's like we are running from 6 a.m. till oftentimes 9 at night. So, but that said, in a condo, that's a great reason to simplify and get away from a lot of that exterior housework that is tedious and takes up time and energy and money. But one of the things that I think a lot of people really get surprised by, and again, it might not be the case in every condo community, but doors and windows are very often the owner's responsibility. And so I think that one probably takes most people by surprise. And then within that, let's just say, a car runs into your front door. There's probably more damage than just the door, but let's pretend. Maybe it was a motorcycle, just hit the door.
It's crazy gnome lady running into your door.
Yeah. And you've got to replace that door. You don't necessarily get to choose exactly what that door looks like because you've got to refer back to all of those conditions in the bylaws. So it's really important to know those. But that's probably one of the biggest. And then one of the properties that we manage, we don't manage in the HOA of this particular property, but we manage several units that are rentals in the property. The deck repair and the upkeep is actually the owner's responsibility as opposed to the association. And so on the flip side of that coin, there's a different condo association where we manage one rental unit in it, and that one is actually the association's responsibility. So it just really varies. And so, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but you got to go back and know what you're getting into, because it could be different depending on where you actually purchase. Another one, snow removal. Sometimes it's the owner's responsibility. Sometimes it's the association responsibility. When I was in college, I worked for a snow removal company. And, we'd get my roommates and I would get the call at 3 a.m., got to go out and shovel snow. They didn't trust the college kids to drive the trucks, so we would just drive to the site with our shovels, and we'd go behind the plow, because this particular condo association, the plow would get, 24 inches from the garage door, and then we had to go through and shovel by hand up to the garage door, and then also the walk up to the door. There's others where actually one of the other sites that we went and removed snow for, the shovelers didn't have to do anything because it was the owner's responsibility for the walkway. So we got to go to Perkins early, and we beat the snowplow drivers there, because that was where we ended up, Perkins. I don't know why, it just was.
Yeah, and that's really, really important, because if you're buying specifically so that you want to be safe and make sure that you do not have to go out there and shovel your own walk, that's a huge consideration. And hands down, often when I'm shopping with clients and we start to narrow it down, it's really helpful to put these items into a spreadsheet, because that's kind of the only way to remember what is included in each one and what isn't, so that you can start to kind of compare apples to apples. Okay, so we're going to talk just a second about restrictions. So one of the things that, if you don't like restrictions, condos can be really challenging. But the bottom line is, by upholding the rules and prohibiting a lot of these activities, it does tend to keep the places safer, and it also really leads to upholding the property value of that association. So let's talk a little bit about what some of the restrictions that you can often find in those bylaws that you need to look for.
Yeah, and I'm one of those guys who doesn't like restrictions. So I'm with your husband on 10 acres. That's me. My wife is probably more like you, so that's all right. It works. Restrictions. I think one big one that you often see is parking. Number of vehicles allowed. Sometimes it's even if you drive a commercial vehicle, you can't park those in some of the condo communities out there. So that's one to be aware of. Oftentimes there are assigned parking spots, other times there's not, but parking is a big one. Pets is a big one. Some communities allow them, some have weight restrictions, breed restrictions. I do think it's important to note for you, the Americans with Disabilities Act does allow for some exceptions, some accommodations to that. If you have a service animal, documented emotional support, obviously it's on you to make sure that is documented, and a good association will make sure as well and understand that they need to make accommodations for you in that. But pets is definitely one that is a big, very often there's that restriction. Another thing would be, does the community allow rentals? So maybe you buy this condo and then you get a sweet deal on one down in Florida and you're going to be gone for part of the year, or maybe you're going to move down to Florida for the rest of your life or whatever, and you want to hold on to this one here and rent it out. Some associations allow that and others don't. And so it's important to know that. And then if you do, and this is just some word of advice, because I've run into this with some of my clients, they want to rent it out, and it's allowed, but then we have to modify our lease. So they'll hire me to manage the property as a rental. We have to modify our lease to make sure it coincides with the bylaws of the association. So that's where I'm getting in with a spreadsheet and making sure everything matches up, because our typical lease might allow 2 pets, but maybe the bylaws say 1 pet, or whatever the case may be. I think they touched on it earlier with Crazy Gnome Lady. Decor. Oftentimes, flags, signs, those types of things are not permitted. Sometimes even, sometimes owners might be able to plant flowers in the flower bed out front, and there's some restrictions on what can and can't be planted. So yeah, that's.
Even things like this time of year, I love drying laundry outside.
Yeah,
You can't get away with that at a condo.
One, yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, right now all of our jeans are on the backs of the chairs throughout our kitchen. So, since yesterday was raining.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the other things that, one thing I wanted to just piggyback on that is that I have found it at different times where I have a client that, okay, there's only one dog allowed and they have 2 dogs or something like that, where we have had the ability to reach out to the condo association, and sometimes you are granted an exception to something that's in the bylaws by going to the association directly, and just make sure you're able to get that in writing.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. One of the things, a lot of times in life, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, but when it comes to condo associations, it is not. So just keep that in mind. When it comes to associations, always ask for permission before you have to ask for forgiveness, because it just makes things a whole lot easier.
I would agree with that. So one of the things that we touched on earlier was that idea of, moving into a condo often saves you that stress of having to do these large financial projects that houses require, such as, redoing a roof would be a great example of that. And yet I have people that move into condos and that are really frustrated by the fact that, well, gosh, I moved in 2 years ago and all of a sudden now I'm getting hit with a $4,000 assessment for the new roofs at my condo association. So can you speak a little bit to how those assessments work and what people should look for when they're purchasing to really, know what to anticipate?
So again, I mentioned it before, look at the state of the reserves that the association has. That is super important. I would look at past financials, current financials, know where they're at. If they're flush with cash, that's a good thing. Because the reality of it is that whether you own a home or whether you own a condo, there are expenses that come up that are unexpected. We all know this. And so when those expenses arise in a home, you got to figure it out, and you got to figure out how to pay the bill. Now, when you're a member of an association, those expenses arise. Somebody's still got to figure it out, and because you're a part of that association, you're a part of that governing board, it is ultimately on you. However, a portion of it is on you. And so that's how assessments work, is stuff that isn't budgeted for, stuff that is unexpected comes up, and they will issue what's called a special assessment, and you'll need to come up with the money. Now, most bylaws will have a time frame, and they'll have all that mapped out, and a lot of associations are even willing to work with you. They understand that everyone's in different financial situations, and oftentimes they're able to sort of work with you to assess it over time as opposed to all up front, again, depending on the state of their financials. But and then just by way of an example of something that might come up, you mentioned the roof, but maybe you're in a mid-rise condo building and there's an elevator in there, and that elevator goes down. And let's say there's 100 units in that building, and the repair on that elevator is $100,000. I like simple numbers because I can't do anything too complicated in my head. 100,000 with 100 units. That means $1,000 per unit per owner would be assessed, and you would need to come up with that in addition to your monthly association dues.
And one other thing that Peter alluded to earlier was that idea that if you are buying or selling at that time, any outstanding assessment or even an upcoming assessment that we know about can be factored into the contract. So if I'm working with someone who's going to be selling and we know, I'm reaching out to the association, finding out, are there any current assessments? Are there any anticipated assessments that they've already decided on? And we're having a conversation of, you know, are you willing to take care of this first? Is it something we were going to try to pass on to the buyer? If you're a buyer, is it something we can get the seller to take care of? So it's definitely an important factor to think about. So Jake, last question before we open it up to other questions. Any crazy disputes that you've seen in the last couple of years that you can share?
You know, I couldn't really think of anything too crazy, but we are going through something right now at I alluded to it earlier, property we manage. It's down in Kalamazoo area. And it's a small community. It's 21 units. They're all, they're like A-frame tri-unit buildings. So we property manage 9 of the units in that property. The 9 that we manage are rentals. There's a mixture of owners and rentals in the remaining units, but there's one particular unit where, and we've been kind of going back and forth with the HOA for several months now. There's one particular unit where I don't know how they got away with this, but it looks like, you guys know the show Sanford and Son? Their yard looks like the set of Sanford and Son, and I couldn't believe the HOA wasn't doing anything about it because it's very clear in the bylaws, and so we've personally been kind of making a stink about it because it makes it difficult to lease the other units. We know that the owners who actually care for their place don't like it, and then at the end of the day, we're hoping that we can potentially get, my clients are looking to probably buy some more units in that building, and if they can get majority ownership, then we could take over the HOA there and clean it up a little bit. So not too crazy.
Yeah. Oh, come on. I was looking for something way more fun than that.
No.
All right. Well, that concludes majority of the questions that I had. I'd love to open it up to any questions for any of you. Okay.
I'm asking this on behalf of my husband. Are there any condo associations that allow you to work on a car in your garage? I'm talking body work as well as mechanical in the Grand Rapids area.
What do you think, Jake?
I cannot give a definitive answer to that. I don't know. I'm sure there are, but that's where you just got to figure out where you want to go and start looking. So,
You know, in a community that had blue laws, inside believe it or not, I had a young man who did that. As long as the garage door was closed and the noise wasn't excessive, and there was no oil running down the driveway, yes. But if he opened the door, there were complaints.
Over there.
Real quick question. You said condos all over the place, up to $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
That one I always see, that was our fan, I think. What is the cheapest condo that you currently, when you were looking, is out there? Because where we live, there's buildings, condos around, and these side-by-side condos are more than our house on a couple acres. And it's like, how would I move down to a condo
Right.
when the new construction seems to be so high?
That's such a great question because one of the definite fallacies that I find when people talk about, moving from a home to a condo is that they're less expensive. They're not. They're absolutely not less expensive. What I want you guys to take away from this is the fact that they are simply a different style of living with different advantages and possibly some different challenges or restrictions if you want to look at it that way. But they're not necessarily smaller. I often move people to condos that have equal space to their home, and they're not necessarily less expensive. But if a condo allows you to live safely into your later years and may allow you to not have to then go into, maybe an assisted living, which is easily very expensive, or keep you safe, that would someday keep you out of even, full-time nursing care. All of those things are financial considerations. So what I find when in this general area, right around Knapp's Corner, there's some wonderful options, and I have moved people into and helped them buy and sell condos. I would say 200,000 is usually about the minimum of what I find you can find, and that's for something that has we have a really nice condo association, Dean Lake Woods, that you can find some wonderful condos in there, but it is older. It's a little bit older, so some of the units have been redone, and the ones that, if you're buying at the $200,000 level, it probably needs some great cosmetic updates. It's got a one-stall garage, and it probably has a completely unfinished basement. So anywhere from that 200,000 to about 350 in this range, you have quite a few choices. If you want something that's nicer than that, there's some awesome opportunities up around Rockford and so forth, but often you're getting into the 400 plus range all day long for the ones that have been recently built, and 400 and even 500,000 all day long.
Let me throw something out there that isn't part of this conversation. We are now, my group is initiated by me, because I live in Heritage Hill, aging in place. If you have a home that can be refitted, there are contractors who are capable of help. I'm like Rick. I always tell you I'm going out in a box, not a moving box. And we initiated this idea about how do we age in the unit, in the house that we're living in. So it's a consideration.
Yep. And we've had other presentations that were solely focused on all of the options for aging in place, and there's certainly some great options. Mary, you had a question?
Liability issues, insurance. Someone mentioned somebody runs into your garage. Who's responsible for taking care of that?
Get their license plate. First, they find out who caused it. Some insurance, condominiums have general coverage for liability and damage. Some don't. We go back to the original concept of know what's covered and what's not covered. And you can carry your own insurance. It depends. It's like anything else. I've read my insurance policy twice, and I still don't understand it.
Yeah, I would think that, honestly, for most homeowners that are condo owners, you would still have a homeowner's policy that simply is specific to your condo. So, somebody runs into your garage, you're still paying.
Homeowner association fees, do they go up? How can they go up, and how do we control that at all?
Yes, they can go up. And it really comes down to the association looking at their budget, looking at needs over the next year, 2, 10, and so they're not static. They do adjust based on the needs of the community. So.
How often have you seen them going up? 5 years, 10 years? Every year?
Sometimes every year. It really does depend on the needs of the community, and so that's where it's important to be. So, and that's the other thing. Like, a lot of times, people will move into an association and they don't go to the meetings. They just rely on the reports and the minutes and things like that. It's important. It's so important to go and be a part of those meetings, so that you know exactly what's being talked about. And then you can plan and have a better look at okay, coming down the road, it looks like, it looks like the dues is going to go up. So.
Yeah, most of the time bylaws will have in them that, specific percentage of people within the association that must vote on things like raising the HOA fees or on specific, additional charges and things like that. So by going to those meetings, you'll definitely be informed of that.
Just to, if I can add, we'd had that situation just recently. When we moved into our condo, it was $235 a month, and that included trash, landscaping, lawn, water, sewage, and snow removal, which I thought was an amazing deal because it was probably $30 less a month than what I was paying at the house for all those services. It's now $255. Mostly because water usage, because when we bought, not all the units were built yet. So as the units get constructed, the water usage, it's kind of a communal thing with our water. So if you take 45-minute showers in the morning and the other guy next to you takes a 5-second shower, doesn't matter, it all homogenizes out. So he's winning because he's using more water than you. But that's how it goes. But always go to your meetings, because what's great about seniors is they fight like crazy to keep those rates down. It's amazing. It's so cool.
Yep. Brenda, you had a question?
I looked at this was out east, and in addition to the homeowners association fees, there were two of them. There was also a front fee. How typical is that in Grand Rapids?
Yep. Speak to that.
It's not atypical. There is a joiner's fee, which again, interesting enough, if you're getting a mortgage, they will look at the HOA fees and the joiner's fee, initiation fee. It could range anywhere from $500 to a couple of thousand, depending on what they do, and that goes directly into the reserve fund.
Yeah. Often we see it as either 1 to 2 month. If the HOA fees, let's say, are $250, it's not uncommon to see a buy-in fee of $250 or $500. So 1 to 2 months is pretty typical.
But this was explained. What they told me was I was actually paying for the water lines that had gone in, and it wasn't just 1 year. It was 5 or 6 more years. I think.
Gotcha. So that would really be considered more of what we call an assessment versus a buy-in fee. Usually a buy-in fee is a relatively small fee that is a one-time when you're signing the contract and buying it. But those assessments are also what we've been touching on that are so important because they can make a huge difference in what you're paying for that condo. And something like a water line, that'd be a great example of a large assessment over time. Yep.
This is a good reason to leave these.
All right, we have time for, we're going to go 2 more questions and then wrap it up. So Angela, okay.
Sorry, I was a little minute late, so if you answered this, I apologize. But you talked about, finding out like if there's litigation in the HOA, things like that. But what do you do as far as like researching the applicants for the communities, and where do fair housing come into that? Are you basically applying for membership?
Are you asking about applicants as far as people who are buying there?
Yeah, if I was a buyer, like what research are you doing as an association about me personally before you
Nope.
None.
Nope.
None. No different than buying a house. Yeah,
Yep.
we were really talking about litigation against the association itself, because if
Yeah.
you saw that there were multiple, suits over time, you would want to question the integrity of that association.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope. Anybody can move in as long as they can write a check or get a mortgage. So, yep.
Good question,
All right.
though.
The term site condo is a new one to me. Do they allow, what type of facilities on the land? Like, can I put a raised bed garden in my yard, or?
Yeah, well, the reason for site condos is that the municipalities require a certain amount of frontage for every house. It's usually 66 feet out to the middle. This is called a PUD, and what they do is they lop all the houses into one frontage, one gate area, and so that's how it's covered. You're allowed, and we go back to this, the reason they're attractive to some people is you can pretty much do what you do, and here's the catch, that's consistent with the neighborhood. You know, you don't want to buy, well, you can't grow cannabis in your backyard.
Darn it!
Although I had a house, anyway. So, and also if you can build another unit, an auxiliary unit, not another primary residence, as long as it's consistent with the original. So if you have a house and you want to build a pole barn, most of them will let you if it looks like the house. So it is interesting. And there are architectural requirements in site condos because to protect everybody from somebody putting up, you know, an igloo or something, I don't know. But
Are they always freestanding condo site?
oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, it looks like a house when you. It looks like a house when you drive in. It looks like a community. The fact is, they all contribute to the maintenance of the things outside of the sites, the roadway, the lighting, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of neighborhoods in this area are site condos. So it doesn't necessarily mean a lot. It's more like a neighborhood with a governing HOA that does control and, you know, certain aspects and has some restrictions. So our home is in a site condo. It really means nothing. We pay a couple $100 a year and it maintains the sign at the end of our road. Nothing else. You know, we don't do anything else, but we do have to, you know, we can't park a camper in our driveway indefinitely. So there are some restrictions that go along with that also help, to me, maintain the property values because we don't have Sanford and Son, you know, moving into our neighborhood and storing everything in their yard because the bylaws restrict it.